The FIA says this is about safety. A new detection system, tested this weekend in Miami, that tracks how fast a car picks up speed off the line and steps in if the launch is dangerously slow. Flashing lights, automatic electric power, emergency measures. Ferrari sees something else entirely. Maranello's stance is that enough is enough. And when George Russell stood in front of cameras and made it clear exactly which team blocked the bigger rule change, he did not need to say the name. If you had asked anyone inside the Ferrari garage after Japan 2 weeks ago whether Maranello's start edge was locked in, they would have told you the matter was settled. The car was built, rules were written. Everything had been signed off more than a year earlier. They had no idea what was about to come out of the April 20th meeting in Paris. Here is what the FIA approved. Starting this weekend at the Miami International Autodrome, every car on the 22-car grid carries a new piece of onboard software that did not exist 3 weeks ago. The moment the 5 red lights go out and the clutch drops, sensors start tracking the car's forward speed. If a car fails to reach a set speed within a short window after the start, the system takes over. It sends power from the electric motor below 50 kilometers per hour, a zone where that power is normally blocked under the 2026 rules, and pushes the car forward with just enough force to get it off the grid. At the same time, flashing warning lights kick on at the rear and sides of the car to alert every driver coming up from behind. How it works is simple. The system tracks how fast the car is picking up speed in the moments after the start. If that speed falls below a set point, the system kicks in. No driver input, no team control, fully automatic. The scope is tight on purpose. Looking back at the first 3 races of the 2026 season, the system would have kicked in 2, maybe 3 times total. It would have caught Liam Lawson's near stall in Melbourne. It would not have caught Max Verstappen's poor launch in China. The line sits between a bad start and a truly dangerous one. It turns a terrible launch into a poor one, not a good one. To see how thin that line is, go back to Albert Park, round 1. 22 cars on the grid for the first time in the new era. The lights go out, and Lawson's Racing Bull's car barely moves. His turbo has not reached full boost. Clutch is in, but the car is crawling forward while the rest of the field takes off at full race speed around him. Franco Colapinto in the Alpine right behind came within meters of a full-speed rear-end hit. Meters. On a grid where cars hit 100 kilometers per hour in under 3 seconds, the gap between a near miss and a full-speed impact is measured in fractions of a second. That moment is the reason this system exists. Not Ferrari's edge, not Mercedes' anger. A stopped car in the middle of 21 cars at full speed. There is a reason the cutoff point matters this much, and the timing of what came next in the rule meeting is almost too perfect. At first, the FIA wanted any car that set off the system to serve a drive-through penalty at the end of lap 1. The goal was to kill any reason for teams to game it, to stall on purpose and let the electric boost gain back spots they would not have earned on their own. Every single team pushed back. Their case was simple. A car in that spot is already in trouble. The driver is already in the worst place on the grid. Punishing them on top of that was pointless. The FIA accepted that logic. In return, one thing was made clear. If there is any sign, at any point, that a team is using the system for gain, penalties will follow. Every team agreed that the system as built would never give anyone an edge. It exists only to stop a stalled car from becoming a sitting duck on the grid. Both Miami and Canada are sprint weekends, which gives the FIA 4 standing starts across 2 events to gather data. If the system works as planned and causes no side effects, it becomes a fixed rule from June onward. Ferrari's turbo design is the reason this whole fight exists. Ferrari built the 067/6 engine around a smaller Honeywell turbo than any of its rivals. A smaller turbine has less spinning weight. Less spinning weight means it spins up faster. And in a world where the MGU-H no longer exists to spin the turbo up with electric power, as we covered in detail on this channel before, spin-up time is everything on a standing start. The trade-off Ferrari took on is real and easy to spot. A smaller turbo limits airflow at high engine speeds. That costs power on long straights. The gap in straight-line speed next to Mercedes is clear and shows up on every speed trap. Ferrari makes up for it by leaning harder on the electric motor during those stretches and managing the exhaust flow with extreme care through corners and mid-speed zones. The car hits 100 kilometers per hour from a standing stop in roughly 2.5 seconds. This choice looked small at the time. It was not. Without the MGU-H, the turbo can only be loaded up through engine revs held against the brake before the clutch drops. A bigger turbine needs more exhaust energy to reach full speed. A smaller one needs less. On a 2026 grid, where every maker is learning the new hybrid setup for the first time, that gap in spin-up time decides who jumps forward at the start and who gets swallowed by the cars behind. Ferrari saw this before anyone else. They flagged it to the FIA. They were told to fix it through engineering, and they fixed it better than every other team on the grid. Ferrari's engineers made a knowing bet. They gave up raw top speed for launch grip. They chose to win the first 200 meters of every race rather than the last 200 meters of every straight. And the numbers from the first 4 starts of the season prove the bet is paying off. Across 3 Grand Prix and 1 sprint, all Ferrari-powered cars combined, that is the works team plus Haas plus the new Cadillac entry, gained 25 grid spots on the first lap. 25, more than any other engine maker on the grid. And no, that number is not padded by backmarkers making up places from the rear. The works Ferrari team alone has been the fastest car through the first corner at every event this season. For contrast, look at what is happening to the other makers at the start. Red Bull-powered cars lost 21 spots combined across those same 4 starts. Verstappen has had several poor launches and is clearly fed up with where the team is heading. Audi-powered Sauber sits at minus 26 spots. If you are wondering how that is even allowed under the current performance rules, so is everyone else. And then there is Mercedes. The works team has won all 3 Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli leads the drivers' standings with back-to-back wins in China and Japan. George Russell took the opener in Australia. Mercedes has locked out the front row at every single race weekend so far. And yet, across 4 starts, the Mercedes works team lost 22 combined spots on lap 1. Not because the drivers got it wrong, because their bigger turbo takes longer to build boost, and the window between clutch drop and the first braking zone does not forgive that. 25 spots gained versus 22 spots lost. Ferrari and Mercedes. Same grid, same rules, opposite results off the line. The same small turbo that holds Ferrari back on the straights is the weapon that wins them every start. The same big turbo that gives Mercedes top race pace is the weak point that costs them every launch. Engineering is not the problem here. The politics are. Mercedes, backed by Red Bull and Audi, pushed a plan through the F1 group to remove the energy harvest limit at race starts entirely. The idea was clear. Let every car use more electric power off the line, no matter what turbo they run. Level the launch results across the field. Wipe out the edge that one specific design choice, a smaller turbo, currently gives. It needed enough votes to pass. It did not get them. Russell made it very clear after qualifying in China which team had blocked the plan. He did not name Ferrari directly, but the meaning landed like a hammer. He called the pushback a little bit silly. Ferrari's stance has been the same from the start. A year before the season began, the team went to the FIA and raised the alarm about start rules under the new setup. The warning was clear. Starts would be hard under the new engine design. The FIA's reply left no room for doubt. Build the car to fit the rules, not the other way around. So Ferrari did exactly that. Millions of euros and thousands of hours went into building an engine around faster launches, following the rules as written. Now, 3 races into the season, the rules keep moving. The 5-second pre-start window came first, then the updated blue light warning system, now the start detection system. 3 rule changes in 2 months, all aimed at the same part of the race where Ferrari rules. Maranello's answer has been blunt: enough is enough. So, Ferrari is fighting a wave of rule changes, and the start detection system that goes live from Friday is only one piece of a much bigger package that hits the grid this weekend. The April 20th meeting produced a full set of changes that every side agreed on, alongside the start system. Every team boss, every engine maker, the FIA, and Formula One management all signed off. The start detection system is the only part that is not yet locked in as a fixed rule. Superclipping, the phase where cars slow down hard on track to charge the battery, drops from a cap of 8 megajoules per lap to 7. That is expected to cut the charging window from the longer stretches seen in the first few rounds down to roughly 2 to 4 seconds per lap. The cost to lap time across the field is about 1 second. Peak boost power is now capped at 150 kilowatts above base output. This tackles the closing speed problem that nearly caused a serious incident in Suzuka, where cars running on full boost were catching charging cars at very dangerous speed gaps. Split zone power means the electric motor keeps its full 350 kilowatt output in key speed-up zones, but drops to 250 kilowatts for the rest of the lap, evening out the power spread. Throttle cutoffs for entering power limited mode tighten to 98%, held for at least 1 full second. This closes a gap where mid-corner steering moves were dumping electric energy from the system by accident. The energy counter now resets on the warm-up lap, fixing a flaw that was messing with power planning from the grid. Every one of these changes fixes a real problem that showed up in the first 3 rounds. Charging windows were too long, speed gaps between cars on boost and cars charging were dangerously wide, and the energy system had weak spots that teams were already poking at. Nobody argues with that. And if that were the only story here, Ferrari might have taken the package without a fight. Every team voting yes suggests they did accept the broader changes. The start detection system is where they drew the line. And if you step back from the details, the pattern is hard to miss. Formula One has a long history of rule tweaks that show up right when one team finds an edge. The 2021 mid-season pit stop rule slowed down Red Bull's sub-2-second stops. Technical Order 039 in 2022 went after Mercedes' zero-pod concept and forced a stiffer floor that completely changed how their car worked. Flexi-wing rules have hit McLaren, Mercedes, and Ferrari at different times, usually within weeks of the team in question stringing together a run of wins. The rulemakers always frame these moves as safety or fairness fixes. Every team being hit always calls it targeted. Both sides are usually at least partly right. What makes the Ferrari case different is the timeline. Maranello did not find some clever trick or build a grey area part mid-season. They read the rules as written, found a chance within them, warned the FIA about what would happen, were told to get on with it, and then built their entire engine approach around the answer. The edge is not a hack. It is a design choice built into the core of the engine before the first car ever hit the track. Taking it away is not as easy as writing a new rule. It means Ferrari has to completely rethink how their engine works, which, looking back, makes every rule battle in this sport either deeply fair or deeply handy, depending on which garage you are standing in. Ferrari sits second in the team standings right now, roughly 45 points behind Mercedes after 3 rounds. 3 podiums in 3 Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc finished 3rd in Australia and 3rd again in Japan. Lewis Hamilton took 3rd in China, his first podium since joining Ferrari at the start of the season. Every one of those results came down to what happens in the first 200 meters of the race. Once the field locks into race pace, Mercedes pulls clear. Ferrari knows this, and their starts are not a bonus. They are a lifeline. Think about what this means for Hamilton. He left Mercedes after more than 10 years to come to Maranello. He moved there to chase what would be a record-breaking 8th world title. And in the first 3 races of that run, the only thing keeping him on the podium is the fact that Ferrari's car jumps off the start line better than anything else on the grid. Take that away, and Hamilton's 3rd place in China becomes a 5th or a 6th. Take that away across a full season, and the title fight he moved to Italy for starts to look very different. Now, Ferrari could have stopped there. They could have taken the safety story, accepted the wider package, and moved on. They did not. And that lifeline now has a timer on it. If the Miami and Canada tests go smoothly, the start detection system becomes a fixed rule in June. On its own, that system does not touch Ferrari's edge. It only fires in extreme cases, the near stalls, the dangerous bog downs. The system would not have kicked in on any Ferrari launch this season. What comes after is the real threat. Each rule change builds push for the next one. The 5-second window led to the blue light system. That blue light system built the space for the detection system test. And the harvest limit plan that failed in April has not gone away. It will almost surely come back for another vote. If it passes, Ferrari's smaller turbo edge at the start goes away. Not because the turbo stops working, because every other car on the grid gets enough electric power to match it off the line. Ferrari is already planning ahead. Maranello has a bigger turbo design running on the test bench, built closer to the Mercedes approach, aimed at winning back straight line speed. That is a long-term move. For Miami, for Canada, for the entire first half of the season, the 067/6 and its small Honeywell turbine are the only engine Ferrari has. Every rule change between now and the summer break either shields that design or chips away at it. Ferrari also gets extra development time and upgrade windows under the new rules because their overall pace falls more than 2% below the Mercedes mark. The feeling across the paddock is that Ferrari will use this help to close the gap. So Ferrari is defending one edge, their starts, while using rule-based help to fix another weakness, their straight-line speed, at the same time. The politics of that spot are clear to everyone in the paddock. You cannot ask for help in one area and refuse to give ground in another without the rest of the grid noticing. And this is where the weekend itself becomes more than just a race. Miami is the first event back after a 5-week gap caused by the axing of the Saudi Arabian and Bahrain rounds. 5 weeks of rising tension, 5 weeks of test runs and backroom talks. Every team has had time to study the April 20th package, run the numbers, and build their case for whatever comes next. The paddock arriving in Miami Gardens this week is not just here to race, it is here to test whether the new rule setup holds and whether Ferrari's fight against more changes lasts past the weekend. 22 cars line up at the Miami International International Autodrome this Friday for the first of 4 starts across the sprint weekend. Every single one carries that new piece of software, code that watches, tracks, and decides whether a start is bad enough to need automatic help. The system probably will not fire this weekend. By the FIA's own guess, 2, maybe 3 times across a full season is all it takes. Sprint qualifying on Friday afternoon gives them the first live reading. Saturday's sprint adds another. Sunday's Grand Prix brings the third. By Monday morning, the rule makers will know whether the system works as planned or whether it needs a fix before Canada. What Ferrari actually fears is not the detection system itself, it is the data the system creates, because that data feeds the next meeting, the next plan, and the next vote. And somewhere down the line sits the harvest limit change that would squeeze every team's launch speed into the same tight range. Ferrari drew a line in China. Enough is enough. This weekend, the FIA drew a line in Miami, and between those 2 lines sits the question that shapes the rest of Ferrari's season. A year ago, the FIA told Maranello to build the car to fit the rules. Ferrari did. The rules are changing anyway. Whether anyone on the other side of that line is listening depends on what happens over the next 3 days in Miami. If you want to stay across every part of this weekend and beyond, subscribe. I will be covering all of it.